Welcome to the 4 Habits podcast, where we help you build relationships that thrive at home, at work, and in life. We're Dr. Andrea and Jon Taylor-Cummings, and every week we bring you actionable insights to create meaningful connections and lasting success. So let's dive in.
So you're really going to want to lean in for this conversation where we're talking about how to diffuse high conflict situations, especially when the toughest personalities are involved. And with us in the studio today is Megan Hunter. Megan, thank you so much for joining us and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I'm terribly excited to talk with you and learn from you.
Well, it's mutual, but as our audience knows, before we jump into the conversation, we have to give you your proper introduction. So, Jon, why don't you take us through the bio?
For sure. Always love doing this bit. Okay, so Megan Hunter is the CEO of High Conflict Institute, which she co-founded with Bill Eddy to help leaders and families navigate the toughest personalities with practical, science-backed tools. Her path began inside the justice system, first with the Nebraska Dawes County Attorney's Office, and then 8 years at the Arizona Supreme Court, where she saw brilliant people derailed by avoidable conflict, and she decided to change that story.
Mm-hmm.
Known as the conflict influencer, Megan has trained professionals across the United States and in 10 countries, translating high conflict theory into simple habits anyone can use at work and at home. She has published and co-authored practical guides like BIFF at Work, and we're going to be talking about BIFF and expanding on that in a moment, and the High Conflict Co-Parenting Survival Guide. And she co-hosts the podcast, It's All Your Fault. Again, we're going to talk about that, because that's what it seems to be always.
That's usually what we say.
It's always your fault. Whoever you are, it's your fault. She brings real talk and real tools to everyday flashpoints. In 2024, she co-launched conflictinfluencer.com, and again, we'll be talking about that in a moment, to support parents and individuals facing high conflict situations, extending her mission to build calmer teams, healthier families, and brave leaders who de-escalate with confidence. Whew. In one sentence, Megan, what does it mean to be a conflict influencer? And why do most of us get conflict wrong at work and at home, even with the best of intentions?
Oh, great question. So, we talked about conflict for a long time. High Conflict Institute came around in 2008. So, we've trained professionals with this terminology about high conflict people, high conflict personalities. But if you're in a relationship with someone that displays high conflict behaviors, it can kind of seem overwhelming to think of it as this high conflict personality, like kind of an impossible task to have a relationship or to manage that relationship. So I thought about different terms over the years, like how could we kind of put this into a framework with something with meaning, some kind of title that makes it seem possible.
Yeah.
And eventually out came conflict influencer. So it's not an influencer like social media, which although, you could be for the good, but it's really about influencing conflict in a positive way, and that it is possible within almost every individual, probably, almost every individual. So that's where conflict influencer came from. And it just kind of, everywhere I said it out loud, people responded well. It seemed to resonate rather than high conflict people or high conflict personalities or difficult or toxic people. And it's just, these are, you're talking about someone with a different operating system, and we just don't have the user manual for it. So we need to have that user manual so we can influence the relationship. And then why do we get it wrong, or how come it blows up in our face a lot is kind of the genesis of all of this is us as humans getting it wrong so often, and we make the conflict bigger unintentionally. But when we're faced with someone who has high conflict behaviors, we're often getting it wrong because it's about, 90% of the time, 95% of the time in your work, your your personal life, just out in the community, in the world, you're around, and we're all around people who are having kind of a regular operating system when it comes to relationships and conflict and how things go and what our expectations are about each other. And then when you're faced with that one person who really gets under your skin and who does things a different way, we're often emotionally hooked. And even if we're not emotionally hooked, we're used to doing things the way we've been doing them with everyone else. And if you do it with someone with a high conflict personality, you're going to get it backwards, and it will make the conflict bigger.
Yeah.
I just want to just pick up on that for just a second there. Is there something that makes some people have this different operating system? What causes some people to be, I don't know if you've looked into that at all. I guess maybe you have. But what is it that makes some people these high conflict people? Is it just because they're different to us, or are some people just wired differently to be more, I don't know, aggressive, more high conflict, more demanding in these situations?
Yeah, demanding, aggressive, defensive. So, it was really interesting. About 2 years ago, I was training a group of mediators. The organizer of the event was a seasoned mediator, high level. And after the training, he said, Megan, I have mediated a lot of tough cases over the years. And I always thought that high conflict meant that person was just having a bad day today. And now after the training, I realized that this is their everyday. Right? So where does it come from? The reason I shared that is because this has been building over a lifetime. I think there's probably some genetics, and there's some evidence to support that. There's some who are more defensive genetically, some who are more sensitive genetically, some who are more aggressive genetically, some are warriors, right? Then you have, you're born and you have a little bit of a big need to be attached, securely attached. And if you don't get that, perhaps that starts you down a path of problems, right? Now enters trauma. And some people are more resilient, and they're going to be able to resolve trauma and get it out of the brain, but some don't. And it's that unresolved trauma that often drives bad relationships in the future and a lot of relationship problems. So it starts to develop this wiring, like you were saying, and it just develops this different operating system. Not a bad person. Everyone has good traits and not so great traits, but there comes a point with some people, if we're looking at a spectrum, that when they get to that 9 or 10, 8 to 10 maybe on the spectrum of 10, their relationships are always going to be difficult because they see the world through a different lens, and they experience it through a different lens because their brain is wired differently based on their first phases of life.
Well, and I guess we're hoping that some of those people, those difficult people out there, will be listening in on this show and getting some self-awareness and trying to improve. But absent that, the rest of us, nice people out there, have to deal with these difficult people. How do we do that? How do we deal with these difficult people? Because I guess that's what most people. Everybody thinks it's your fault. It's you. You're the difficult one, even if it's me who's being difficult. How do we respond, or what are your what's your advice for dealing with some of these difficult people when we come across them?
Well, the fascinating bit is that the person with a true high conflict brain, right? They have this pattern of unmanaged emotions, extreme behaviors, all or nothing thinking, and then the blame. It's always someone else's fault, and I'm always the victim. So it's like the automatic first thought is, it's your fault. When I feel anxiety, it's your fault. And it's just that way every single day. And they have no insight or self-reflection into that. So I've had people come to us and say, I'm the high conflict person in my relationships, and I really want to improve. And I say, okay, you may be a 7 or 8 on the high conflict scale, but if you truly had a high conflict personality, you wouldn't know it. There's just zero self reflection. There's no insight into that. Now, on the flip side, the rest of us out there, the 90% that are trying to figure out these relationships and survive them, we're filled with our own self-doubt. So here's the flip. The high conflict person doesn't ever believe they have any responsibility or role in a problem. And it's all your fault. While you now, because this is different, you're thinking, well, maybe they're right. Maybe it is all my fault. And that's your first clue that you may be dealing with something different here, because you have to remind yourself with, everyone else in my life, the people I'm around, I get along with them fine. So why is it this one that I have self-doubt, or I feel like I'm doing something wrong, or I have to work harder, or try harder at this relationship, and it doesn't ever seem to get better? So that's kind of background. But then what do you do? There's a few really simple hacks. The first one is you have to acknowledge that this person is different. And, we find that often people don't want to acknowledge that their loved one, their child, adult child, typically, spouse, workmate, business partner, has is not doing things intentionally, like negative things intentionally. And they really, it's not intentional. It's just the wiring of how they are. So there has to be this acceptance of, okay, this is different. And then that empowers you to do things differently with them. Then you're emotionally unhooked. Because the problem is, when you're emotionally hooked, you think, I'm just going to try harder, or I'm going to have a sit down and hash it out with this person, and it's going to get better. We're just going to hash this out. Well, in high conflict, that makes it worse. So you have to think of it in terms of a very opposites world. And I have to stop myself. I feel that self-doubt. I feel put down. I feel demeaned, degraded. I've seen some rage come at me, a lot of blame. All right, stop. Stop before engaging. And then it's think about, what are the different skills I have to do? So the first thing really is, in face-to-face conversations, you have to, again, do the opposite of what you feel like doing and what you're used to doing. And that means I have to calm the other person before I start giving logic, giving information, so our natural instinct is just to start explaining ourselves, because we're usually being blamed. Yeah. So, well, I didn't do that. No, and that's not right. Well, if you do that, now you're just going to escalate things. But if you stop and you go, okay, I need to connect with this person with empathy, attention, or respect, what we call an ear statement. And it's really the connection that's key, because they need it to be all about them in that moment. You can't make it about you. And that will help calm their react brain to really prepare it to receive information. And we want to get people.
I was going to say, that's probably the hardest thing to do in that moment when you're feeling attacked, or you feel the need to defend and explain yourself, is to then give empathy, attention, and respect to the person you think might be being aggressive or hostile or something.
Yeah, it's very counterintuitive, and it's just not naturally how we respond and react. And there's things going on in our own brains. Our emotional hook comes from, fight or flight too. And when we feel we're in fear or danger because we're being attacked or blamed or something, then we can get hooked. And we can get hooked by different things. Some are hooked more by that narcissistic, put you down. And then we want to defend ourselves. And when we're in that emotional state, and when you feel that, like you have a big feeling outside your norm, stop. Just stop and I got to do something different. So it starts with a little bit of ear to, connecting with a person with ear to get their react brain connected. And then we want to bring the logic brain back online, or we need to set a limit sometimes.
But before you even get to that, I just want to say, what does that look like in practice? How do you do that connection in practice? What's an example? Somebody is or demonstrating high conflict. How do you do that connection piece?
Yeah.
So they're laying into you somehow.
They're laying in, and it isn't always big. When we hear the words high conflict, we think it's somebody just screaming and yelling, which it might be, but it can also be a very nuanced, just putting you down subtly, right? Just destroying your heart and your brain with a few words. So we listen for things like that make us feel different. Or, so if someone says, well, you just don't care about me. Our first thought is typically, well, I do care about you. We care a lot about you here. And then you just kind of move on. And they say, well, I don't feel like you care about me. So you can say the words, I care, but if you aren't connecting with them, meaning give them some eye contact, get a little bit closer, not in an aggressive way, but something that shows that you do care and you're paying attention and you keep your tone of voice calm. Almost all of us have a temptation to increase our volume when we're hooked. And I do, right? So if I have to stop, bring it down, breathe a little bit, make sure my tone of voice is calm, and I connect with that person. Look, I really do care about you, and I'm going to give you some time here. Let's just take some time to talk about this. That'll bring that react brain right down. They just need that connection in the moment. And then maybe you can get down to business after that, or you can just move along. But that's another example would be respect. I felt disrespected. You disrespected me. Well, guess what? They've just told you what their brain is craving in this interaction. It's respect. The last thing you probably feel like giving them is respect because, right? But that's what you have to do if you want to keep the conflict small, or if you want to get the conflict to go away. It has to be, look, I respect all the work you've done to bring this team together, or all the work you've done. So something that shows respect, it doesn't have to be the word respect, but they do respond to that really well. So kind of that more narcissistic type, or, the dominating types need that respect in order to stay in a calm state of mind. Where someone who needs to feel more connected, they're a lot more needy and need to feel cared for and acknowledged, then we give them empathy, give them attention.
So what I hear you saying is that to help diffuse the conflict situation, pause if you know it's triggering a different response from you than you would normally be giving, and just focus on what it is that the other person needs to help speak to that, so that you calm things down and can have a better conversation. Is that what we're saying so far?
That's exactly it. It's right. Because if you think about what's happening in that person's brain, someone's telling you, screaming to you, my reacting brain needs to feel connected.
Right.
And I can't do it myself. They don't have that insight or that awareness. And so they need that from you. And it's that will calm them. And it works most of the time. It's not going to work all the time. So it's not a guaranteed thing. And it takes a lot of practice. But once you do it and you get empowered by the response, right? Because you're used to things blowing up, getting bigger, the conflict escalating. And then when you try this, it's kind of doing an intervention just right now. Yeah. And you feel that, you see that something has worked, it is the most empowering thing in the world. And then it gives you a lot of juice the next time.
Yeah.
Right. So
do you have for example, Megan, of just seeing this play out in a family or in a team that you could, tell us what was happening and how this played out in the end?
Yeah, I had a guy in one of my classes recently. He was a CFO of a tech company, and really just getting kind of exhausted, which is the main word we hear when it comes to high conflict, is that these are just exhausting relationships, right? So he had learned this technique called calm before think, meaning connect with the person to calm them with an ear statement before you get them thinking with a think action, or set a limit with them. So he, I think he maybe thought, I don't know if this really works or not. Is this a bunch of mumbo jumbo? So he came back the next week to class and he says, well, guess what? I have 2 screens on my desk, and I saw that employee coming down the hall that's constantly complaining about coworkers and the team and all of those things, right? And he says, I've just been getting it, like I can get nowhere with this guy. So he was dreading the guy coming in, like, guy came in his office, and right as he was walking in, CFO looks over at his other screen and he sees the template from the class the night before where I taught calm before think and use an ear statement. So, all right, give it a go. So the guy complained about something, regarding a coworker. And the CFO would typically, and most of us would typically go into problem solving mode, right? When we're at work, we're problem solving. We're hired to be problem solvers. And so we take that load on with a high conflict person. You're never going to solve their problems because the issue is not the issue. The problem is not the problem. The problem is them, their feelings about it.
Yeah.
So the simple hack was then he just looked at him. After the complaint, he said, that sounds really frustrating. And the guy said, oh, yeah, it is. And he was so taken aback that his brain felt better. He just left. Right?
Problem solved.
Problem solved. And that's the thing. That's it. It's the problem is solved. That is the problem solving you do.
Yeah.
So as managers, as leaders, as workers, right? As people in any relationship, if you take on the problem solving in a high conflict relationship, as you do with other relationships, you're doing it the wrong way. The problem solving shifts to, I have to address their strong, big feeling that needing to be connected, respected, feel dominating. Some get pretty extreme, and then we want to set a lot of limits with them, but we still do it with, empathy, attention, and respect. And then he said the next time the guy came in, he gave him an ear statement again, and he actually had a real issue that needed solving, but his complaining around it is, the high conflict, they're going to complain a lot. It just seems a lot bigger. So I gave him a little ear, connected with him again, and then pivoted and shifted him into a think action. And that's kind of the second step to this is you got to get people thinking. You don't want them sitting in their react brain. Let's get them in whole brain, get that logic brain online, and you have to guide them through that. So you pivot into, we start with an ear statement. Look, I see you're really frustrated about that. React brain says, yes, thank you. It's all about me. Good job so far. Now part 2. So what's your proposal for how to handle that? Now I've just shoved the person into logic brain, think brain, and they have to think about, so put yourself in that CFO's shoes. He's used to solving that problem. I've got to figure out how to do this. Now he's left the other guy sitting in react brain. He'll slip right back into react brain. So you want to keep him in whole brain, thinking and logic and all that. So what's your proposal for how to handle this? And they may come up with some, marvelous solution, or they may not. They may, realize that there's not really a problem there. And that this is just based on big feelings. It makes it feel like a big problem when it's really not.
Wow, you make it sound so simple in the way that you've described it, and I'm sure if we can contain our own reactions, create space between the reaction and how we respond, then we can find something to give to whatever the person needs. An ear statement. I hear you. I see you. I understand how frustrating it must be for you. Okay. What do you think we can do about it? That will really help move things along.
Well, I want to pick up on that. If we can give people some air, as you say, air statement to help.
Air, not an earful.
Not an airful. Not an airful. Exactly. Not that one. No.
It's really good. I love that.
No. Empathy, attention, respect. I get it. Where does BIFF come in? I want to pick up on that
yes,
one.
what's BIFF?
What's BIFF? Where does that come in?
So BIFF is where we shift from, verbal face-to-face conversations or phone or Zoom or whatever into those written hostile emails, text messages, Slack messages, wherever there's something in writing. And kind of the story behind it is my co-founder, Bill Eddy, was training a group of judges years ago, and they were family court divorce judges. And they're used to parents coming in with, like reams of paper full of emails that they printed out or text messages. And it's just this hostility that goes back and forth. They're like, what do we tell these people? Like, if you've got a high conflict co-parent, what's the non-high conflict parent supposed to do about this? And I'll tell you this, I consulted with a guy recently who had uploaded 1 day's worth, 24 hours worth of text messages from his ex-wife, and they shared children, into ChatGPT and asked it to count how many messages in 1 day. It was like 770.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
How's that even possible?
Did they get anything else done but send messages between each other?
Unemployed on work leave or something, right? It's medical leave. So Bill, back to the judges, Bill said, well, tell that parent that whenever they email, respond to a hostile email, it needs to be brief, because you don't want to open up more defensiveness and it needs to be informative, meaning just facts and neutrality. You don't have to be defensive. You don't have to defend yourself against all the allegations they've made. Because guess what? Once they've hit send or, sent the email, the text message or whatever, now they feel better because they've had all this stored up. Comes out, hit send, their anxiety comes down. Now you get it. Your anxiety goes up. So again, stop yourself. Don't get emotionally hooked. Or if you are, don't respond to it right away. But when you do, it's got to be brief, has to be informative, just factual and neutral. And the factual neutral part, I've had some say, well, it's a fact that, she's a B word or something like that, right? And I'm like, okay, but is that neutral? So it's got to be both.
Yeah.
And then friendly, just a friendly tone, which can be hard to do in, a difficult relationship. But if you have a hard time thinking of it as friendly, it just means civil. And if you have a really hard time with that, have a friend read it, because they're not going to have that emotionality with it. And they can say, this is a little too, right? Yeah. And then the last F of the BIFF is firm, which does not mean harsh. It simply means that you just are going to end the conversation. And if there's a core question that the person has asked you, like if it's a co-parenting relationship, and they want to know, they've been griping a lot about different things in the email, but there is one core question in there, like what time you're meeting on Friday night. Just answer that. And that's what firm means. I'll meet you at McDonald's at 4:00 on Friday. Best regards, whatever. Yeah. Or if you need a response back from the person, you don't want to leave them hanging with like an open-ended question. Would you like to meet at McDonald's? You have the question focus them on a choice between two things, such as, would you like to meet at McDonald's at 4 or at 4:30? Which works better for you? Mm-hmm. And that way they get shoved over into, think brain instead of react brain. Yeah. Because an open-ended question is going to get you a, no, I'm not even going to meet you at McDonald's. Right?
Don't tell me what to do.
Can't tell me. Right. So, and then there's 3 A's. You want to take out any advice, admonishments, or apologies. And advice and admonishments, usually, people are pretty good with that. They understand why. But the apologies piece is tricky. And the reason for it, whether it's in writing, whether it's in person, in any relationship, high conflict relationship, our first temptation, particularly with women, I will say, is to say sorry. Or to apologize, because we've just been blamed for something, and it's we either feel anxiety and we feel like we need to apologize because we don't know what else to do, or we're logically trying to calm the person, thinking that a sorry is going to fix it. But all it does is validates in that person who's blamed you, in their mind, now that you validated that it is all your fault.
Yeah.
And that's BIFF. And when you do it and you get something back that's different than the other 778 messages, you feel like you have a superpower.
Yeah,
You just
indeed.
do.
So brief, informative, which must be both factual and neutral, friendly, and firm.
Correct.
Yeah, so not
You got
some
it.
of those long rambling messages that take chunks out of the other person that we've seen.
Yeah. There's a proverb that says, in a multitude of words, there is sin. Keep it very brief. If you say too much, you know you're going to say the wrong thing or,
Right.
yeah, I love it.
It's going to open up something in the high conflict brain that's defensive.
Yeah.
And just less is more. Less is more.
And do these skills, I know that with some neurodivergent people, they can just go straight to anger because they can't process emotionally or read body language and read the room well, and it's kind of on or off with nothing in between. Do these skills help diffuse things with people who are neurodivergent in that way?
Yes, absolutely. And because I think every brain responds well to ear, empathy, attention, or respect.
True. Yeah.
And giving, someone some space. And I think, with those who are on that neurodivergent spectrum somewhere, right? They need the world to ask maybe if there's a way I can help this situation. How can I help you? Right?
Yeah.
Not that you're talking down to them or anything, but I want to understand what's going to help you the most.
Yeah.
Right. So give a little ear first, and then what can I do to help?
Yeah.
That's kind of the feedback we've received quite a lot from people, especially on the autism spectrum.
Yeah.
Is not judging, not blaming, not shaming anyone, anywhere, anytime. But especially when it's just someone with a brain that works a little bit differently, whether it is autism or, it could be, I kind of look at this high conflict as somewhere on that neurodivergent spectrum because it's all about the brain.
Yeah.
And with this, then you have a little bit of the personality as well that gets into a very difficult place.
Yeah. And as you say, life history that might have predisposed them or wired them for responding to conflict like that. I mean, to be fair, I think most of us don't turn up to conflict well and have to learn how to do it better. So any tools to help just press pause on how we would normally react and engage better, or as you say, give that empathy, attention, and respect. Just take ourselves out of the picture for a minute, focus on what the other person needs, which is hard and very grown up, I have to say. Sometimes we just want to, respond in kind, but how's that working out for you is what we always ask.
But what I'm loving from this is there's hope. So if you are in a long-term relationship, let's go with a domestic romantic relationship, and you're partnered up with somebody who, for whatever reason, is manifesting as a high conflict person. Maybe it's the stresses of life, whatever it is. Maybe it's the way that for whatever reason they're manifesting like that. You, on the receiving end of this, may well feel justified in thinking, look, this is now my fault, my problem. Why do I have to deal with this? But I'm in this situation here. I have to live with this stuff. That's why I started by saying it sounds like there's hope here. So there are things that you can be doing to almost talk them down off the cliff, get them into a better place. So therefore the relationship can benefit. So there are things that we can be doing to take responsibility for that, which is what I find very encouraging.
Yeah, you're right. There is hope. And we don't want to give false hope. Some of these are the most difficult relationships of all. But I've seen the person opposite the high conflict person learn the skills and they feel very empowered, and they create a threat reduced environment for the person. And depending on kind of what type of style of high conflict it is, what that personality is, some you can just really help them by connecting with them when they're in a rage moment and say, look, let's try this differently this time. I'm here with you. I'm going to stay here with you. Let's just try that. Let's just breathe together. Let's bring it down. And I've done that myself, and I've seen it work. I've made it work, right? Hoped it would, and it does. But it's our natural temptation and feeling to just, I can't do this, or we escalate along with it.
Yeah,
and instead
fight
just
for your rights.
Yeah, fight for my rights, and it's not fair. Why should I have to sacrifice? Well, if you do a nice blend of, connection and setting limits. We haven't talked about that yet, but a big part of high conflict is setting limits.
Well,
and it could be as simple as saying, that's just not going to work for me. I think that's one of the most powerful things. Instead of thinking of, I need to set a boundary or set a limit, we think of it as, I have to tell someone not to do something.
Yeah.
And instead, it's about what I'm going to do or not going to do. That's just not going to work for me.
Yeah. I'm glad you went there, Megan, because I think it's important, as you rightly said earlier, not to give people false hope. If you're with somebody who is a high conflict person and that then translates into, I don't know, physical abuse or something like that, you don't want to be sticking around trying to give them air, or, as you rightly say, wrapping your arms around them. You've got to do something different. What's your advice in that situation?
With limits? What else?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What else do you do?
I'll give you a quick example. During COVID, with everyone in lockdown, we had a lot of cries for help from people who said, I'm now stuck in this house 24/7 with this person that I've been able to, somewhat put up with because, this person was away at work all day, or, now we're in a house together. That was hard enough for most people. But if you're in a home with someone with a high conflict personality who has the, antisocial or narcissistic features, now you may be in, an abusive situation, and a lot of people were feeling really one down and didn't know what to do, but they didn't have anywhere to go. They couldn't escape this. So we taught them in those situations to de-escalate and keep things from getting bigger, the conflict from getting bigger and putting you in a more of an abuse situation. Try giving a little respect. Just give little ear statements here and there, just until this thing's over and we can all get out and move on, right? So if you're, I guess the analogy here is if you're in a desperate situation and you need to calm the situation, then use an ear statement. If it's a bigger picture and you're thinking, do I stay in this relationship? What do I do about this? Well, if you're being abused, if you're being put down, if you're being, gaslit, that's the big, trending term, which gets it way overused, but there is a real thing here, and you're being blamed for things. You're being, things are being projected on you. You're being accused of doing things that person's actually doing. It's really common with some high conflict. You have to look at that bigger picture. You have to get out and talk to others who can help you. You have to realize, understand, whether to get out of this or not, because no one should be abused, right?
Yeah.
There are some of these skills you can use with some people, not everyone, that will calm the situation, and you can find a place in that relationship to go on. It may be that you are going to sacrifice, so it's a personal decision, but as long as you're not being abused, maybe some people can manage that. But there are other situations, as you know, are going to be, intimate partner violence, coercive control, all of that. And you really do need to talk to a therapist or someone about what you should do, and focus on your own healing. And the interesting thing about going to a therapist, it is about you, and that's very necessary. And there a lot of healing needs to take place. When it comes to the decision about what to do, whether I stay in this relationship or I go, or how do I handle the conflict moments, that's where people come to us instead of a therapist. We've had a lot of therapists say, I wish I knew this information back, 20 years ago, because I could have helped so many more people, because it's focusing on decisions about your life.
Yeah. And speaking about helping people, Megan, how can people get hold of you? How can people get help from you?
Well, so we kind of have these two platforms, if you will, now, and one is for professional life and one is for personal life. So professional life, it's highconflictinstitute.com. And that's where we come do training. We have all kinds of online training. We have courses. We can do management consultations, schools, you name it. Anywhere there's high conflict, we can help.
And who's coming to you for that? These are the professionals who deal in that space.
Right. So let's say it's a lawyer or human resources professional, school administrators, ombudsman, customer service, managers, leaders. We have new ways for work training for leaders of organizations like managers and that to deal with, high conflict. Coaching. We train professionals how to deal with their own clients, customers, and internal workspace, right? With their own teams. And then if we shift over to the personal side, if you have high conflict in your personal life, it's conflictinfluencer.com. And that's brand new for us. We've just started this. And what I recognized over 18 years was people are desperate for help. And they're very alone and isolated when they're in a high conflict relationship, whether work, at home, or family. Divorce. And they needed one place to go where they can get all the help. So what's typical is they go into, they might go to a little bit of coaching, or they go to a little bit of therapy, or they go, read a book, whatever. I wanted one place where they can come and get help 24/7, books, podcasts, online courses, group classes, online community. And it's a beautiful thing. And people are feeling supported and not alone and not isolated and not like they're a bad person.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, it's almost like we've come full circle, because that's what you said at the beginning, that we all have great things about us and we all have things that aren't so great about us, but that doesn't mean we're a bad person. We just need to learn to turn up differently sometimes.
Yeah. And the true high conflict person, underneath it, there's vulnerabilities, there's insecurities, there's, they're just out of balance and they don't know it, right? So they feel kind of bad underneath. Some of them do, but they also make the rest of us feel bad.
Yeah.
And so people kind of come to us, and they're just in such a one down position, and they feel so badly about themselves. And they realize that I don't have to, because it's not about me.
Yeah.
I'm involved in a relationship here with someone who has a completely different operating system, and I haven't been able to figure it out. Now I've got a user manual, and I have to practice it, and I'm going to get it wrong sometimes, but I at least am now kind of more in my seat of power.
Yeah.
And I can survive this, and I can make decisions about my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing.
As we draw to an end, Megan, thank you so much for this. It's been really insightful. I think, as I said earlier, you've given hope to people who are in relationship with high conflict people. But towards the end here, you just said, for the high conflict people themselves who may be feeling bad, not knowing how to deal with it, what parting thoughts? What would you say to them? How can they help themselves, back away from that cliff?
Well, they'd have to be like a 7 or an 8 to even have any slight bit of self-reflection. You have to remember, this is their wiring. They've been developing this their whole life, so it feels very normal and natural and necessary, because it's the brain making, directing this and guiding all of this, and informing every decision and thought. So if I would say that the people who've come to us and said, look, I think I'm the high conflict person in my relationships, I always turn it around and say, well, good news is you're not a high conflict personality because you wouldn't have any
Just by
insight.
saying that.
Right. But we can all get better. We all have junk in our trunk. And a lot of times in a high conflict relationship, you will start to feel like you are a high conflict person. And that's just impossible. You can't be a high conflict person if you haven't been developing this way and have these certain criteria and traits, right? But that other person often will bring that out in us, right? And we'll overreact, we'll explode, we'll get sassy, we'll drop a few F-bombs, outside your norm. So, so everyone can get better, right? Even those without some insight. Very interestingly, we have a New Ways for Families program, which is for divorcing parents and separated and co-parenting. And we teach the same skills to everyone. We don't care if you're high conflict, not high conflict. You show up, you need to learn how to manage your emotions, have all flexible thinking, moderate behaviors, and to check yourself instead of blaming. Not everyone's going to be great at it, but if you can do it a little bit better, everyone can learn skills.
Love it. There's hope for us all.
Yeah, indeed. And I love the way you described it as developing habits that can serve us. So it's try it, reflect on it, go again, and keep doing it until it becomes a better habit in dealing with diffusing conflict.
Yeah, that's where you two are so powerful with this. It's that's exactly it. You have to develop those habits.
Yeah, amazing. Well, I knew we'd be very aligned and that it'd be very insightful, and you delivered just as we thought. So thank you so much, Megan, for making the time to join us on the podcast. Thank you.
It's been my absolute pleasure, and I applaud the work that you're doing, and I'm grateful that you've had me on, and I hope it's helpful to someone in some way.
I'm sure it'll be helpful to many someones, not just one someone.
I have no doubt. And I was just going to say to our audience around the world, thanks for being with us yet again. Take away some of this stuff. Apply it. If you are that high conflict person, there are things, as Megan has shared, the things you can be doing. And if you're living with or working with or just surrounded by high conflict people, again, there are things you can be doing. So check out the resources. What were they again? There was High Conflict Institute, but that was more for the professionals. But Conflict Influencer, if you are the individual looking to get better at handling conflict or get better outcomes out of some of these situations, then conflictinfluencer.com. But Megan, thank you again for being with us. To our audience around the world, thanks for being with us. And for now, it's a wrap.
It's a wrap. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the 4 Habits podcast. Now, if today's episode resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget, take our free relationship skills quiz at the4habits.com/skills quiz to start improving your relationships today. Hit subscribe and we'll see you next time.